Hello, this is Tony and Michael. We're here from Soul Group Insights with questions and answers. Lynda Jacaro, who comes regularly to our meditations.
Hi, Lynda.
Has a question. And a question is this. My friend Ali, who is from Iran and lives in Dubai, lost his mother recently. He was led to believe that she was between 6 months and 2 years more to live. But she was very ill and died a few days later. We explained to him that she saw no point in continuing with her life as she was suffering so much. And then in brackets it says, my other friend was able to communicate with his mother. I think she must have been psychic. So he asks, the question is, as per my understanding, our death is planned already, and we can't change the date of our death. But can we change it as we want? If so, there are many people in hospital who are suffering and willing to die, but they can't. Why don't they change it to earlier? I am really confused. It would be so good if you can answer this question. Thank you. So I'm fairly sure this is Lynda Jacaro asking this question.
Yeah, a complex question. We have, as I believe, and I've mentioned before, a ticket in and a ticket out. We come in with a burst of energy that surrounds us, infuses us, and that burst of energy gradually dissipates as we travel through our physical life to the point at which it can no longer sustain our physical body, or it can no longer sustain the experience around us, and we move on into the spiritual realms. And we can do that in a number of different ways, but we will do that at the point at which that energy no longer sustains us here. People in hospital. And we've all visited elderly relatives in hospital, and I'm sure that many of you have thought at times, well, they're alive, but they're not alive. They're being, their physical body is being tended to, but they don't seem to be there. And on many of occasions, I've seen that they're not really there. They're halfway between here and the spiritual realms that they're destined for. Technology and advancement in technology is not necessarily a good thing all the time. And we create circumstances physically where we're holding people that really shouldn't be held, where we're keeping them back when they should be moving on. And I know it's difficult. We saw, Jane and myself saw a dog the other day that was in a terrible state. It had a big tumour, and it was on a lead, and somebody was taking it for a walk. And that dog must have been in agony. And what holds that dog here and doesn't allow it to go to the spirit world are the owners. And the owners are holding that dog because they want that dog with them, rather than saying, it's time for that dog to move on. In fact, I had a little Cairn Terrier, and she was in a state, and I asked her, I said, do you want to go home? And she psychically said, yes. And so I had to let her go. And we cling on to people because we think we're going to lose them. And so we, by any means we can, try and keep them here. But if we were also working psychically, and if doctors and nurses were also working psychically and built that into their job description, they would know when it was time for that person to move on. And they would know that they were holding them here unnecessarily. When that energy had been spent, they were infusing more energy into the physical body and keeping it here. But really that person should move on. So what is wrong is not that we try and keep people alive. It's that we don't add a spiritual aspect to what we're doing. It's the missing link that I spoke about in another question. The missing link is connection to the God within, connection to the spiritual worlds, connection to our own heart, and acting on that knowledge. So that if it's not time for a person to go, then we would know that. If it is time for a person to go, we would know that too.
This is, correct me if I've got this wrong, but what we're saying is there's looking at these situations physically,
Yes.
and there's looking at these situations spiritually.
Yes.
And there's looking at it spiritually is the bigger picture.
Yes, it's the input that's needed.
Yeah.
With these important decisions, life and death decisions, we need input on a greater scale than we have with our physical senses.
Yeah.
And so we have to blend the two. So what I'm saying is that the key to people going at the correct time and not being held here when they really want to move on into the spiritual realms is to add to our experience here a spiritual perspective. It's missing.
Exactly.
If the spiritual perspective is there, then a person knows on one level that that it's the time for somebody to go, and knows certainly on a spiritual level that it's time to let go of them. We should be infusing all our major decisions here with input from our spiritual senses. If we do that, then people move on at the right time.
Yeah.
And if they're not to move on, then we know it's not time for them yet.
Yeah.
We can treat this person in this way and they will get better. But when they're past that point and we're just holding on to them via the physical body only, then we have to know that.
Yeah.
And then we can make sacred decisions based on the input that we get.
Yeah. Lynda, I've just been in a similar situation in that in the last few weeks my brother died, my younger brother, and on a physical level we were close, we're a good family. But we had the same, on the spiritual level, I knew he was ready to go. I knew that his soul had decided that he'd done everything that it wanted to do on this earth plane, and that it was time to go. He spent his life in Africa and came home, and literally came home to die. And I could see that because on the physical side, the hospital, the way they work, tried to keep him alive as long as they could, and in the end turned him off. But it's what we do. It doesn't mean that it's right. It's mean that doctors are trained in a particular way and they act that out to the best of their ability. But actually, from a spiritual point of view, the end result was inevitable. Philip, my brother, had done what he came to do, and it was his time to go. So I do understand the problem, and I do understand the dichotomy of looking at both sides of that problem. But I'm so glad you've brought it to light, Lynda. We both thank you for that question. It's so important to so many people, and I hope we've given you the right answer.
But just as a coda to that, I'm just bringing to mind something I should have thought of earlier. A few months ago, a lady up the street from us died, an old lady, and she'd been in hospital for some time.
Yeah, I remember.
And we were passing her door about 3 days before she died. And I saw her standing in the doorway.
Yeah.
She was making a last visit to her home. And at that point, she was gone. She was almost gone. But her physical body would still be in a hospital somewhere.
Yeah.
And we would still be attempting to keep that physical body alive at all costs.
Yeah.
But she had already gone. But there would have been a point physically when people said, well, that's enough, we'll have to turn off the machinery.
Yeah.
It's not what it seems. Life is not what it seems.
And death is not what it seems.
And death is not what it seems. We need that input spiritually to make these decisions. And we should be having people who can see. I'm not talking about myself, but people in all conditions who can see, who work in tandem with those who can't see. So that there is a group decision based on physical values and spiritual values.
And to know beyond any doubt that death isn't death.
No.
It's a wrong impression, isn't it?
Yes, we're taught to fear death, and we're taught to push it away and not think about it.
Yeah,
And it's a natural
release.
process. It is a release. Yes.
No, absolutely. Thank you for that, Michael. Lynda, thank you so much once again, and goodbye.
Thank you, Lynda. Take care.